I want to welcome you to this presentation about final expenditure reporting. Grants, whether federal or state, follow similar phases which include a pre-award phase, an award phase, and a post-award phase. The final expenditure report is one piece of the post-award phase or part of the grant's closeout process. The closeout step is where the grant process ends. To complete a closeout, you, the award recipient, must submit the final financial and programmatic reports. In this video, you will learn about the requirements of a final expenditure report, also known as an FER, as well as the steps you need to take to complete the report electronically in the Comprehensive Continuous Improvement Plan, or CCIP. The CCIP is a web-based grants application and verification system that includes the final expenditure report. Please be sure to view the step-by-step directions about completing a FER in the Interactive Grants Manual found on the Ohio Department of Education's website at education.ohio.gov and by searching Grants Administration, where you will find a link to the manual. This video provides a vast amount of information, however, in no way captures all federal and state requirements. Please be sure to review all federal and state grant requirements in addition to program assurances. A link to the funding application assurances can be found in the CCIP for each funding application on the sections page for web-based grants. If your grant is managed on paper, you will have received a paper copy for your signature and future reference. As always, please reach out to the grant application's ODE contact or the Office of Grants Management with questions. Keep in mind that typically a grant period follows Ohio's fiscal year of July 1 to June 30th. There are some exceptions to a grant period just mentioned that will not be covered in detail in this presentation. You will want to work closely with your grant's ODE contact to be clear about the grant period for each grant you receive. You may be asking yourself why an FER is important. To begin, it is used to assist with ensuring compliance with all state and federal grant requirements and conditions, as well as to make sure you spend all the funds appropriately. Reporting requirements and expenditures claimed on the FER are governed by the Cash Management Improvement Act, codified by Title 31 of the Code of Federal Regulations, or CFR, Section 205. Title II CFR, Section 200 of the Federal Uniform Guidance, the Education Department Administrative Regulations, or EDGAR, found in Title 34 of the Code of Federal Regulations, as well as any state regulations. All of these regulations apply to state grants unless stated otherwise by the awarding office. As we progress throughout this video, it will be helpful to define some key terms we will be using. The substantially approved date is the date a grantee is legally allowed to begin obligating grant funds. The period of availability specifies a period during which the grantee may use the federal or state funds. Expenditures are allowable cost charged to a project or grant. An obligation is the amount of an order for property and services, contracts and subawards, or similar transactions during a given period that will require payment during the same or future period. An encumbrance is the name given to funds that have been reserved for a purchase order when finalized. It is a record made in one's financial report to represent planned or obligated expenditures. The encumbered amount is set aside to fund the obligation. The term liquidated refers to the payment of an encumbrance or obligation. For more information on these terms, plus others, please refer to the Grants Manual found at education.ohio.gov and by searching Grants Administration, where you will find a link to the manual. All entities who receive an allocation to carry out a grant's objective is required to submit a final expenditure report at the end of the grant period for each fiscal year an award is received. The FER provides a financial picture into how you spend the grant funds. There are times when a grant is awarded to entities who do not incur expenditures during the grant period. Although no expenditures were incurred, an FER is still required to be submitted. If only a portion of the funds are spent or if no expenditures were incurred, the FER allows the department to manage any unused allocations reported on FERs. The unused grant funds will move forward into the next fiscal year if this action is permitted by the grant program. Depending on the type of grant application, the final expenditure report will be submitted either online through the CCIP or manually using the standard and most current paper forms developed by the department. These forms and instructions are available on the Grants Administration webpage. For FERs administered in the CCIP, submission is required no later than 90 days after the end of the project date. And for paper FERs, submission is required no later than 60 days after the end of the project period. In most cases, all projects end on June 30th. It is important to submit all FERs by the deadline and resolve any discrepancies and requests for additional information in a timely manner. Failure to submit the FER in a timely fashion or resolve outstanding issues may result in one or more of the following: temporary suspension or termination of program operations and/or cash payments, audit findings. Your organization may be considered a higher risk for monitoring purposes. Late submission of an FER could impact the district's efficiency rating and competitive funding levels. Therefore, it is encouraged that FERs are submitted by the due date and any discrepancies along with any requests for documentation be resolved in a timely manner. Should you have any questions about grants that are closed, you will want to contact the department's program office with questions. The time frame a grantee can incur allowable expenditures is referred to as the grant's period of availability. The period of availability begins on the substantially approved date and ends on the project end date. The FER is the method used to report the paid expenses that were incurred and obligated during the grant's period of availability. Please keep in mind that unless you have received permission from the program office that administers the grant, all expenses reported on the FER must have incurred or obligated to incur between July 1 and June 30th. Any exception must be documented in the grant agreement or CCIP history log note and approved by the program office. Any obligated cost must be liquidated or paid by September 30th. Obligations such as encumbrances and unpaid invoices that are incurred outside the grant's period of availability should not be included on the FER. It is critical that expenditures reported on the FER match or agree with the grantee's accounting system records and that money spent are reported on a cash basis. As previously stated, no unpaid encumbrances should be included on the FER. You can report up to 10% more than the amount approved in the budget by object. For example, if under Object Code 100, the total amount approved for salaries is $1,000. The amount reported on the FER could reflect 10% more, resulting in a total of $1,100 for salaries. This is oftentimes referred to as the 10% rule. Please remember, if you increase an object by 10% on the FER, depending on the total expenditures, you may have to decrease another category because overall you cannot exceed the total allocation awarded. There are times when a grantee does not close out a grant project or submit a final expenditure report in a given fiscal year. Please know that the department will not approve a FER for a current year project if the FER for the previous year's project has not been submitted and approved. It is important to remember that even if your organization did not spend any monies during the grant period of availability, a FER must be completed and submitted. Next, we will look at the steps to complete and submit the FER in the CCIP. To begin, open an internet browser such as Google or Internet Explorer. Type education.ohio.gov into the address bar to access the Ohio Department of Education's website. Click Enter on the word Login found at the top of the department's homepage. Next, to begin the FER completion process, an individual listed in the CCIP with the user role of fiscal representative or treasurer must sign into his or her Ohio ID account using their personal account name and password. First, click Ohio ID portal, then enter the user ID and password and click Login. On this screen, you will want to navigate to the My Workspace and Applications tabs, then click on the CCIP box. Now place the cursor or hover over Funding and click on Funding Application from the left menu. On the Funding Application page, use the drop-down arrow to select the proper fiscal year and then select All Active Applications from the drop-down menu. Also, while on this page, check the funding application status. To start the FER, the application must be in a final approved status. However, please note there are varying final status names. If you have any questions about a final status, please contact the Grants Program Office. You can find your Grants Application Program contact by clicking on the address book on the left menu, find the appropriate application, and note the ODE application contact. You can click on the contact's name to obtain the contact information. Finally, after verifying the application is in final approved status, click on the funding application in which you plan to complete the FER, such as Consolidated. You are now on the Sections page. Click the FER Draft Started link next to the Change Status To header. One of three scenarios can happen on this screen. 1, the status will change. 2, you are not authorized to change the status. Only individuals with the role of fiscal representative or treasurer in the CCIP can complete this action. Or 3, you will receive a validation message that there is a pending project cash request or PCR for a specific grant or grants. The next 5 slides will briefly discuss scenario 3. Then the preceding slide will pick back up on the steps for completing a FER after the status change to FER Draft Started. The validation message about a pending PCR will state specifically for what grant or grants a PCR is pending. Write down the grant name or names and click Return. This will take you back to the Sections page for the correct funding application. Please note there are times when a PCR is erroneously started for a grant in a funding application that does not have an allocation. Remember, all PCRs listed on the validation screen must be deleted to move forward. Next, hover your cursor over Funding on the left side and click on Project Cash Requests. On the Project Cash Request page, click on the specified grant name, for example, Title I Improving Basic Programs. This will take you to the project summary page. In the PCR section, look for the most recent PCR in the list and click the link under Request Period. It will show a date or show Unspecified. The next screen you will see is the Project Cash Request Sections screen. On this page, if you have the option to select Delete PCR, click the link, then click Confirm to delete the PCR. If you do not have this option, please contact your grants management contact found in the CCIP address book for further assistance. You will also find more information about this subject in the grants manual found on the Grants Administration webpage. Look for How to Complete and Submit the FER link. Once the PCR validation is cleared, you will be able to change the status of the FER to draft started, or you have already completed this step in scenario 1 mentioned earlier. For those who had a PCR validation, you will need to hover over Funding and click Funding Application on the left menu. Then select the funding application in which you plan to complete a FER. You should now be on the Sections page. Click FER Draft Started. After the fiscal representative or treasurer has changed the status, he or she can complete the final report or allow a representative with CCIP data entry authorization to complete the FER. Click Confirm after reading the message shown. Scroll to the bottom of the Sections page and click Final Expenditure Report. When the Final Expenditure Report page opens, enter the amount of cash expenditures using the information from your organization's accounting system. For the consolidated funding application only, if the LEA transferred funds between grants, cash expenditures should be reported against the grant to which they were transferred. After verifying the expenditures entered, hover over Save and Go To and click Next Page. We will spend some time on the FER Adjustments page to go over the various columns. The amounts in Adjusted Allocation and Current Allocation columns are typically the same unless an LEA participated in transferability or school-wide pooling of funds. The amounts in the Reported Expenditures and Adjusted Expenditure columns are also typically the same unless the LEA participated in transferability or school-wide pooling of funds. For the cash received column, this amount represents the payments received by your organization from project cash request plus any miscellaneous and incoming carryover throughout the fiscal year. If your organization participated in transferability or school-wide pooling, you were instructed to report pooled fund expenditures on the previous FER page in the grant that the money was transferred to. On this screen, the system is programmed to unbundle the transfer amount or amounts back to the original grant. This is an automatic calculation for the grants involved in the pooling. For the cash balance on hand column, if the cash received is less than the adjusted expenditures, the cash balance on hand will show a negative amount in red, and a payment will be issued upon approval of the FER. If the cash received is greater than the adjusted expenditures, the cash balance on hand will show a positive amount and a refund will be due or be shown as cash on hand in the following fiscal year. If the cash on hand is a result of non-public unspent money, this amount may be required to be refunded also. Typically, if a refund is due, you will receive a system-generated notification with instructions on how to remit payment. The amount remaining column represents any grant allocation that was not spent in the fiscal year. The non-public service amount not carried forward column is pre-populated and will be used only when completing a consolidated application FER. This amount is populated once the non-public final expenditures are entered on the final page of the FER. We will talk more about the non-public page shortly. The maximum carryover amount based on the non-public FER column is also a pre-populated field for the consolidated application FERs only. This amount is populated once the non-public final expenditures are entered on the final page of the FER. In the amount to carryover column, you may enter a dollar amount not to exceed amount remaining or maximum carryover amount based on non-public FER if this field is available. The amount entered will be available in the next year's funding application after approval of the FER by the department. If the program office or grants requirement allow for the carryover, the box will be available for entry. The box in the Acknowledge Carryover Less Than Amount column must be checked if the amount entered in the Amount to Carryover column is less than the amount remaining column. On this page, carefully review reported cash expenditures to ensure the amounts agree with your financial reports. For FERs related to grant applications such as career technical and adult education, early childhood education, and school psych intern, or in other words, all applications except consolidated, the FER adjustments page will be your last page that will need data entry. When you hover the cursor over Save and Go To at the top of the page and click Next Page, you will be ready to check the validation messages and then for fiscal and authorized representative approval. In a few slides, we will go over those steps. When completing the Consolidated Application Final Expenditure Report, the next page you will see is the Title 2A Professional Development Expenditures portion of the FER. You will enter your organization's Title 2A expenditures for professional development. The amount entered should be the total for both the professional development and non-public purpose codes listed. Please note that this page is used by the Office of Federal Programs and does not affect the expenditures reported elsewhere on the FER. For questions regarding this page, contact your Consolidated ODE application contact listed in the CCIP address book. Now, hover the cursor over Save and Go To at the top of the page and click on Next Page to go to the School Improvement Sub-A Building Level Expenditures page. There is currently no entry necessary on this page. Again, hover the cursor over Save and Go To at the top of the page and click on Next Page. You will be taken to the Non-Public School Final Expenditure Report. On this screen, you will enter non-public expenditures for the schools and grants listed. The district is not permitted to expend non-public funds for district purposes. Therefore, the data entered on the non-public page may affect the carryover and adjusted expenditure amounts reported on the FER adjustments page. Enter the non-public expenditure amount for each non-public school by grant. Enter the outgoing carryover amount you wish to carry over for the non-public schools. Please note that only amounts in excess of the incoming carryover amount can be entered as outgoing carryover. For example, if St. Catherine's had incoming carryover of $1,000 and a service amount of $2,379.70, but only reported $500 in expenditures, the maximum allowed to carry over is $2,379.70. The remaining $500 of incoming carryover would be forfeited. Additionally, if your LEA has received pre-approval from the Office of Federal Programs to pool Title I non-public funds, you will need to check the Yes box to acknowledge your district opted to pool Title I non-public funds. For additional information regarding pooling of non-public Title I funds, contact your Consolidated ODE application contact listed in the CCIP address book. You can also find more information about the non-public page in the Grants Manual, Part 2, FER Tools and Links section. Then look for the link, How to Complete and Submit the FER. After you finish inputting data on the non-public page, hover the cursor over Save and Go To at the top of the page and click on Next Page. Next, you will see the Sections page. On this page, look in the Validation column. If there is a message link in the Validation column, click the link to see the message. If errors exist, they must be corrected before the FER can be submitted. Warning messages do not require correction, but should be reviewed and corrected if necessary. Once all error and warning messages have been addressed, the status of the FER is ready to be changed to FER Draft Completed. The FER is now ready for the fiscal representative or treasurer to verify the accuracy of the information and change the status to FER Fiscal Representative Approved and click Confirm that you are about to change the status. Lastly, after the fiscal representative or treasurer has approved the FER, the authorized representative or superintendent should confirm the accuracy of the FER information and change the status to FER authorized representative approved if all entries are correct. Then confirm you are about to change the status. Congratulations! Once a FER status is changed to FER Authorized Representative Approved, it will automatically be forwarded to the Department's Office of Grants Management for review and approval. If you want to verify it was submitted, hover over Funding and click Funding Application. On the Funding Application page, if the status is FER Authorized Representative Approved, it was submitted to the Department. If the application is in any other status, like Fiscal Representative Approved, it has not been received by the Office of Grants Management. In this case, the FER needs the Authorized Representative's approval. After the Grants Management Office approves the FER, the status will change to FER Grants Management Final Approved. At this time, if there are any payments due, the system will generate a project cash request and any allowable carryover and cash on hand will move forward into the next year's application. If there is a refund due, the FER status will be changed to FER Grants Management Primary Approved. After the payment is received and the FER is ready to be approved, the status will be changed to FER Grants Management Final Approved. Thank you for taking the time to view this presentation. Please feel free to contact your Grants Management contact in the CCIP address book should you need assistance with your final expenditure report.